Today we're going to show you how to perform the melting point technique. First, we'll begin with an overview of the technique. The purpose of finding the melting point of a substance is to test the purity of it compared to the literature value. Every compound has a specific melting range, which consists of the temperature that the first crystal begins to melt until the last crystal has melted. The smaller and closer the range is to the literature melting range, the more pure the substance is. Pure compounds typically have a melting range of about 2 degrees. Today, we'll be using benzoin, which has a literature melting range of 134 to 136 degrees Celsius. To prepare for this technique, first make sure your product is dry and then obtain a capillary tube. Load the product into the open end of the capillary tube by pressing the open end down into your product. You only need about 2 millimeters of product inside the tube. Drop your capillary tube closed end down through the hollow glass tubing until your product reaches the bottom of your capillary tube. Once your capillary tube is prepared, it is then time to utilize the Digimelt. First, make sure the Digimelt is plugged in and turned on. If it's already turned on, make sure it's not too hot to avoid premature melting of your samples. You should have a general idea of what melting range to expect from literature values if you believe you've purified your product, so this is what you base your start and stop temperatures on. Set the desired start temperature by pressing the yellow Start Temp button. Then, using the blue up and down arrow buttons, select the value you want. This value should be around 30 degrees less than the expected melting point of the sample to accommodate for potential impurities. Finally, press the Start Temp button again to lock it in. Decide how fast you want your sample to heat per minute using the yellow ramp rate button. Lastly, set the temperature that you want the Digimelt to stop heating your sample by using the Stop Temp button and arrows. Like the start temperature, the stop temp should be 30 degrees higher than the expected melting point to accommodate for potential impurities. Again, lock in your value and press the Stop Temp button once decided. Press the green and red Start/Stop button to preheat the device to the desired starting temperature. When the ready light comes on, place your capillary tubes into the slots and press the Start/Stop button to begin heating your sample. Note that up to 3 tubes can be placed in the Digimelt at a time for melting point analysis. The red melt light should be on. Observe the samples through the lens, making sure to keep a close eye on them so that they don't melt while you're distracted. Record the melting ranges for each of them. Remember, this is the temperature at which the first crystal begins to melt until the last crystal has melted. Our experimental melting range was 134.1 to 135.7 degrees Celsius. Use your melting point data to analyze the relative purity of your product compared to literature values for the pure product. Because our observed melting range is similar to the literature value, this must be a relatively pure sample of benzoin. Once your samples have melted, remove the capillary tubes. Then, turn off and unplug the Digimelt. Dispose of your capillary tubes in the broken glass waste.